So, welcome to this session on interconnections within countries of one region and countries of another region and a third region. So, this is what everybody is doing now. You already have very strong connections in Europe, where more and more countries keep joining from not only Western Europe but also Eastern Europe, and gradually the grid is expanding. Obviously, there are a lot of benefits in this due to interconnection, optimal utilization of resources, just like you have Uber, Ola, the utilization of which has increased because it's shared mobility. So these are sharing of resources within the region, and there is because of complementarity of demands. Diversity of demands rather, when you have different peaks occurring at different seasons across latitudes, longitudes from one side to the other, you have different timings of peaks. Also diversity of resources, as Reggie mentioned, on hydro and coal-based and oil and gas and renewables. We've got that experience in India because India is also quite a large country with about 30 states. And there, when we interconnected from states within a region, there are 5 electrical regions. So states within a region, and then all the 5 regions connected. The grid has now become very stable in operation, and we have operated at a very stable frequency. Around 50 hertz nominal frequency, and also there are hardly any interruptions in the country. Whereas before, when we started, before integration, used to have there are a lot of disturbances. One disturbance happening almost every month, and in the southern region it was worst. Almost sometimes a separation of the system 10 times a day. But now you have no such thing. You have very stable operation of the grid. This sort of benefit would be obtained by the other countries which are not connected, the countries which are neighboring India in South Asia, which is Nepal. Bhutan, of course, has been synchronized since many years back, since the 80s. But the other countries, Nepal, Bangladesh, and other countries which would benefit in terms of a stable grid operation, as well as Sri Lanka, the countries are trying to connect. Both the countries are trying to get that, and the Gulf Cooperation Council is already connected. All the countries in Gulf Cooperation Council. In Southeast Asia also, as I said, most of the countries are connected. But there will be even more benefits if we connect, first of all, countries within each of these regions, and then across regions. So this gives the 3 regions in general. This slide I've stolen from last year because it was well represented. You can see the SAARC and BIMSTEC region. So BIMSTEC is a combination between South Asia and Southeast Asia, and the GCC is the Gulf region on the left and the ASEAN region on the right. The BIMSTEC is actually a combination, just to show you that it's a bridge between South Asia and Southeast Asia with 7 countries. 4 were initially connected in 1997. Another one was connected later in 1997. And with 2 more nations joining in 2004, it became 7 nations. So this is another regional organization, BIMSTEC. There are a lot of benefits of regional integration. There are lesser reserves required because of the time of peak and demand diversity during the day, and diversity between seasons also. For example, in Nepal and Bhutan, which are hilly countries and which have predominantly hydro resources, their peak demand happens in winter when they have the least inflows from the hydro reservoirs. And therefore, the peak demand happens when their own resources are the least. Whereas in countries like India and Bangladesh, which are not hilly stations, which are plains, the peak demand comes in summer, and we have our winter is a lesser demand so power from India and Bangladesh can flow into Nepal and Sri Lanka, and there could be a sort of a barter arrangement between these countries, yes, for bartering of power. The other advantage is balancing of intermittency of variable renewable energy sources. India has got a big target of 175,000 megawatts, out of which 160,000 megawatts is variable renewable energy, solar and wind. So balancing of this intermittency would be helped by the flexible hydro resources in Bhutan and Nepal, as well as gas-based stations in Bangladesh. And if you interconnect these to the Gulf region, you have a lot of gas stations there, so that could be helped from there. And in turn, Bangladesh, which doesn't have as much renewable resources as they would like to purchase power from, could buy these renewable energy resources from countries like India and other countries. It also helps countries immediately who are facing a shortage to get power the moment the interconnection is made. For example, Bangladesh got power from India, and immediately its industry started benefiting immensely. Its GDP growth is now one of the highest in South Asia. It's 8.5% per annum, which is because there's an intimate relationship between growth of power demand versus growth of GDP. In India, initially we calculated it as almost 1. So a 1% increase in power demand was resulting in 1% growth in GDP. Now it's come down because of efficiency. So your power demand doesn't go up so much as your GDP grows. So more efficient operation. This would also result in more efficient operation of thermal power plants, which if you were to balance renewables from only thermal or coal-based stations, they have to run inefficiently by running at less than optimum capacity. So this would also stand to improve. And there's mutual help due to sudden tripping in any of the countries. So there is no loss of power supply. And of course, there's a more stable grid operation. There's a program of USAID, which is called South Asia Regional Initiative in Energy Integration, which was from 2012 to 18, and now it's continuing to 2022, where a lot of work on this was done about. So if we want the countries to interconnect and to exchange power meaningfully, they should have harmonization of technical standards and grid codes, some amount of harmonization in policies. There was a South Asia Regional Power Exchange exercise done. We have a power exchange in India, but for having a regional power exchange for Asia, an exercise was done, and the report was prepared. A mock exercise was also done. And its impact, of course, of this increased amount of electricity on the common man, as well as gender, in these countries which were suffering shortages. There was also a white paper on South Asia Forum of Electricity Regulators, transmission mechanisms for and investment for common transmission systems, as well as sharing of charges. Some work was done on that, as well as things on open access, which allows competition. And a regional investment framework was also prepared. This is just to show you how things have happened towards regional cooperation. So if you see the 52 years on the top line, 52 years and only so many events happened. Whereas in the next 9 years, which are the next 2 lines below that, a lot of steps have been taken towards regional cooperation. These are the recent policy and regulatory developments pertaining to cross-border electricity trade. So I won't get into details, but this slide would be available for everyone to view later. The government of India has issued guidelines for import-export of electricity in 2018, December 2018, which the objective of which is to facilitate import-export of electricity between India and the neighboring countries, evolve a dynamic and robust electricity infrastructure for import-export, transparency, consistency, and predictability in regulatory mechanisms, reliable grid operation and transmission of electricity for import-export. There are different types of agreements, so I will not get into details of this. I'd rather get more inputs from the speakers here. There's a designated authority which has been appointed by the Government of India, which is Member Power Systems of CA, who will give the in-principle approval for this trade to take place. There are some differences. There was earlier guidelines issued in 2016, and this has become more facilitative for cross-border trade in 2018. There is a provision now for trilateral trade. For example, Bangladesh and Nepal can trade in electricity through the transmission system of India. And of course, power exchange trading is allowed. Accordingly, the CRC, the Central Regulator in India, took out cross-border trade electricity regulations in 2019, and it's got some well, that number of the things, I think this would go into details, so I'd rather skip these details, but in general it says about compliance with technical standards for connectivity to the grid, compliance with the grid code, or to have a common grid code, deviation settlement mechanism, and who would have the authority to grant connectivity, long-term access, medium-term open access, and short-term open access. And trading, some stipulations for trading licensee. And of course, some of these are related to the technical requirements of having recording instruments like data acquisition system, disturbance recorder, event logging, fault locator, etc. And also reactive power compensation at the interconnection point. And protection, coordination, operational planning, and comprehensive South Asia outage plan. This is related to seeing that the transmission lines are not overloaded, so total transfer capability, etc., at the interconnection points. And coordination between the system operators of the neighboring countries. Thank you.